Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku failed the sports festival. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The concrete walls of the waiting room seemed to be closing in, inch by inch, pressing the air out of the small space until there was nothing left but the thick, suffocating scent of ozone and nerves. Izuku Midoriya sat on a folding metal chair, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped so tightly together that his knuckles had turned the color of old bone. One for all. The words echoed in his mind, a mantra and a curse. He could feel the hum of the power beneath his skin, a dormant leviathan waiting to be woken. It rippled through his veins, foreign and overwhelming, a gift from the greatest hero the world had ever known. A gift he was terrified of breaking. Midoriya? He jerked his head up, his green curls bouncing. Masahiro Ojiro stood by the door, his tail flicking nervously behind him. The martial artist looked conflicted, his brow furrowed in a mixture of concern and frustration. Ojiro-kun, Izuku breathed, his voice cracking slightly. I'm reviewing what you told me. Ojiro stepped fully into the room, lowering his voice. I shouldn't even be talking about this. Dropping out, it was my choice. But that guy, Shinso, his quirk isn't physical. It's a setup. Ojiro touched his own forehead, his eyes dark with the memory of losing his own agency. Don't answer him. No matter what he says, no matter how he provokes you. If you speak, you lose. It's that simple. Izuku nodded furiously, pulling a notebook from his pocket, though his hands shook so bad he nearly dropped it. Right. No talking. Silence. I can do that. I just need to get close enough to throw him out of bounds. Just be careful, Midoriya, Ojiro said, turning to leave. He knows how to get under your skin. Good luck. As the door clicked shut, Izuku was left alone with the ghosts of his own expectations. He looked down at his palms. They were sweating. All Might is watching, Izuku thought, the pressure settling onto his shoulders like a physical weight. The world is watching. Everyone who ever told me I was useless, everyone who laughed at the quirkless kid, they're all watching. I have to say I am here. I have to prove that All Might didn't make a mistake. Representing the hero course, Class 1A. President Mick's voice boomed through the stadium speakers, vibrating through the floor and up into Izuku's boots. The kid who placed first in the obstacle race, the Green Machine. Izuku Midoriya. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, a tidal wave of sound that crashed against the tunnel entrance. Izuku stood up. His legs felt like lead. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Calm down, he commanded himself. Clench your buttocks. Yell inside your heart. You can do this. He walked out into the light. The sun was blinding. The Yui Sports Festival Stadium was a coliseum of modern heroics, packed with thousands of screaming fans, pro-heroes, and scouts. The sky was a perfect, mocking blue. Standing across the concrete ring was Hitoshi Shinso. The general studies student looked almost bored. His violet hair was a mess of gravity-defying spikes, and the dark bags under his eyes spoke of insomnia and a deep, simmering resentment. He stood with his hands in his pockets, his posture slouching, the antithesis of a hero. And his opponent? President Mike screamed. From General Studies. He hasn't shown us much yet, but he's here to steal the spotlight. Hitoshi Shinso, Midnight, the R-rated hero, cracked her whip, the sound snapping through the humid air. Ready? She shouted, her voice amplified. Izuku took a combat stance. Don't speak, he repeated internally. Close the distance. Grab him. Throw him. Do not speak. Start. Izuku launched himself forward. He didn't use one for all, not yet. He couldn't risk shattering his bones in the first round. He relied on the physical conditioning All Might had put him through, the beach cleanup, the tires, the fridge. He was fast. Shinso didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just watched Izuku rushing toward him with dead, tired eyes. That monkey was talking about my quirk, wasn't he? Shinso said. His voice was calm, carrying easily over the distance. Izuku's eyes widened. He knows Ojiro warned me. Izuku gritted his teeth, clamping his mouth shut. Ignore him. Just tackle him. I envy you hero course bastards, Shinso continued, leaning back slightly. You get everything handed to you on a silver platter. The perfect quirks. The glory. While the rest of us starve in the shadows. Izuku was 10 meters away. Almost there. That guy with the tail, Shinso drawled, a sneer curling his lip. He was so dumb. He threw away his chance because of some misplaced pride. What an idiot, Izuku faltered. The insult dug in. It wasn't about Izuku. It was about Ojiro. Ojiro, who had sacrificed his spot in the tournament because he didn't want to advance on a victory he didn't remember earning. Ojiro, who had shown incredible integrity. He's a fool, Shinso spat. Just another brainless musclehead trying to play hero. The rage flared hot and instant in Izuku's chest. It bypassed his logic. It bypassed the strategy. It was the same instinct that made him run toward the sludge villain to save Bakugo. The inability to let injustice stand. Don't you talk about him like that! Izuku screamed, skidding to a halt. The world stopped. It wasn't a metaphor. The sound of the crowd, the wind, the blood rushing in his ears, it all vanished instantly. Shinso smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a trap snapping shut on a leg. I win. The transition was terrifyingly subtle. One moment, Izuku was standing in the center of the ring, adrenaline coursing through his veins, ready to defend his friend's honor. The next moment, his mind was filled with white fog. It was a thick, viscous mist that permeated his consciousness. His anger evaporated, replaced by a dull, heavy numbness. It felt like waking up from a deep sleep, that moment where the limbs are too heavy to lift, and the mind is too sluggish to form a coherent thought. What happened? He couldn't see the stadium anymore. He couldn't see Shinso. He was floating in a blank void. He felt safe here. Why was he fighting? Fighting was hard. Fighting hurt. It was so much easier to just be. Turn around, a voice echoed. It didn't come from his ears. It bloomed directly inside his brain. It was an absolute command, as undeniable as gravity. Turn around, Izuku thought. Yes. That sounds right. His body moved. He felt it moving, but it felt like he was piloting a robot from a remote location. His legs swiveled. His torso twisted. He was facing the boundary line. Walk, the voice commanded. Walk out of bounds. Walk out of bounds, Izuku agreed. He began to march. Left foot. Right foot. Somewhere, deep in the recesses of his mind, buried under layers of cotton wool indifference, a panic button began to flash. Wait, a tiny inner voice whispered. No. Stop. If you walk out, you lose. Loss? The fog countered. Loss is peaceful. Just walk. No. The inner voice screamed louder. I have to be a hero. I have to show all might. Stop. Stop. Izuku's consciousness clawed at the fog. He tried to seize control of his legs, but the connection was severed. He was a prisoner in his own skull, watching through the viewport of his eyes as the white boundary line drew closer. Suddenly, the void shifted. From the depths of the one-for-all quirk, something stirred. It wasn't the warm, encouraging presence of All Might. It was older. Darker. Shadows erupted in the periphery of his vision within the fog. 8 silhouettes. They loomed over him, silent sentinels of the power he carried. Their eyes glowed, gold, red, white, piercing through the brainwashing mist. He felt a surge of power. A crackle of lightning that didn't belong to him. Move! Izuku screamed at his hand. Move a finger! Break it if you have to. Use the pain. Wake up. He focused everything he had on his right index finger. He remembered the feeling of the Delaware smash. He remembered the sensation of his bones shattering against the giant robot. He needed that pain. He needed the shock. The power of one for all swirled around his fingertip. The energy was there. It was right there. Snap! He commanded. His finger twitched. Just a twitch. A microscopic spasm of muscle. It wasn't enough. The brainwashing was too absolute. Shinso's hold was ironclad. The mental fog smothered the spark of one for all before it could ignite. The silhouettes of the past users seemed to reach out, their hands grasping for him, trying to pull him back from the precipice. But Izuku's will, fractured by anxiety and overwhelmed by the sensory deprivation, slipped. The energy dissipated. His finger went limp. The ghost faded back into the dark. No. Izuku thought, his mind weeping. Please, no. Move. Move. His right foot crossed the white line, then his left. The command in his head vanished instantly. The fog cleared. The sounds of the world came rushing back in a deafening crescendo, not of cheers, but of murmurs. A collective gasp of confusion from 50,000 throats. Izuku blinked. He was standing on the grass outside the concrete ring. He was facing the tunnel he had entered from. Midoriya Izuku. Present Mick's voice wavered, lacking its usual gusto. Is out of bounds. Hitoshi Shinso advances to the second round. Izuku stood frozen. The summer breeze hit his face, drying the sweat on his forehead. He stared at the grass beneath his boots. It looked so green. So normal. He turned around slowly. Shinso stood in the center of the ring, his hands still in his pockets. He looked relieved, a small exhale escaping his lips. He didn't look triumphant. He looked like a man who had defused a bomb. I told you, Shinso called out, though without the amplification of a mic, his voice sounded small in the massive arena. You hero kids. You rely too much on power. Izuku opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He had lost. He hadn't thrown a single punch. He hadn't used his quirk. He hadn't shown the world anything other than a boy who got yelled at, and then walked away. The jumbo screen showed a replay. It showed Izuku screaming in rage, freezing mid-step, turning around like a mindless zombie, and marching calmly to his own defeat. It looked pathetic. It looked comical. What was that? Someone in the crowd shouted. Hey! I bet money on the green kid. Did he throw the match? He didn't even fight. What a joke! Is that really the kid who won the obstacle race? Must have been a fluke. The insults rained down like arrows. Each one pierced Izuku's chest, finding the insecurities he had tried to bury. Midnight waved her whip. Midoriya, please vacate the field immediately. We need to prep for the next match. Izuku's legs moved on their own again, but this time, it was just shame propelling them. He bowed hastily to Midnight, unable to look her in the eye, and scrambled toward the tunnel. He wanted to disappear. He wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. I'm sorry, All Might, he thought, tears finally pricking at the corners of his eyes. I'm so sorry. The tunnel was cool and dark. Izuku walked with his head down, clutching his stomach. He felt nauseous. Young Midoriya! Izuku flinched. He stopped, refusing to look up. All Might stood near the entrance to the waiting rooms. In his buff form, he filled the hallway, a beacon of American colors and unwavering strength. But even without looking, Izuku could hear the strain in his voice. All Might, Izuku whispered. It's okay, my boy. All Might said, his signature laugh sounding hollow, forced. A cough interrupted it, a spray of blood catching in his hand. He deflated instantly, vanishing into a cloud of steam and emerging as the skeletal Toshinori Yagi. Toshinori wiped his mouth, his sunken eyes filled with a complicated emotion. It wasn't anger. It was pity. And that was infinitely worse. That quirk. Toshinori sighed, leaning against the wall. Brainwashing. It is a formidable ability. A villainous one, if used incorrectly. You couldn't have known. Ojiro warned me, Izuku choked out. The tears began to fall now, splashing onto the concrete floor. He warned me not to speak. He told me exactly how it worked. And I let him provoke me. Toshinori went silent. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I see, Toshinori said softly. You defended your classmate's honor. I lost, Izuku said, his voice trembling. I have one for all. I have the power to change the weather. I have the power to save everyone. And I lost to a few words. I didn't even, the vestiges, I saw them. I felt them trying to help me. And I still couldn't do it. He looked up finally, his face streaked with tears. I'm not strong enough, am I? Toshinori placed a bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. he squeezed. You are kind, Midoriya. Your heart is your greatest strength. But yes. Today, that heart was used against you. He didn't say you failed. He didn't say, give it back. But the implication hung in the air. You weren't ready. Go to the infirmary, Toshinori said gently. Get some water. Recovery girl will want to check you for any lingering mental effects. Aren't you going to watch the other matches with me? Izuku asked, a desperate hope in his voice. Toshinori looked away. I have to meet with Nizu. About security. I will find you later. He walked away. Izuku watched his mentor's back retreat down the hall. For the first time since meeting All Might, Izuku felt truly alone. He didn't go to the infirmary. He couldn't bear to see Recovery Girl's knowing look. Instead, he found a vending machine in a deserted corridor, bought a bottle of water, and sat on the floor, staring at the opposing wall. He sat there for what felt like hours. He heard distant cheers. Explosions. The rumble of Todoroki's ice. The festival was moving on without him. The world didn't stop because Izuku Midoriya failed. Eventually, footsteps approached. Heavy, angry footsteps. Izuku looked up. Katsuki Bakugo stood there. He was wearing his gym uniform, looking as explosive as ever. He stared down at Izuku, his red eyes narrowing. Kaken, Izuku murmured. Bakugo didn't scream. He didn't spark his palms. He just stared, his expression unreadable. I was watching, Bakugo said. His voice was dangerously quiet. I messed up, Izuku admitted. You didn't mess up, Bakugo scoffed. He kicked Izuku's shoe lightly, a gesture of supreme disrespect. You just showed your true colors. I told you, didn't I? You're a pebble. A quirkless reject trying to play in the big leagues. I have a quirk, Izuku whispered weakly. Do you? Bakugo leaned down, his face inches from Izuku's. Because out there? You looked exactly like the useless Deku I've known since we were 4. You got baited by a no-name extra from General Ed. You walked out like a dog on a leash. Izuku flinched. He insulted Ojiro. Who cares? Bakugo straightened up, looking down his nose at him. Winners don't care about insults. Winners win. That's the difference between you and me. You care about being a good person. I care about being number 1. Bakugo turned around, jamming his hands into his pockets. Don't bother watching my match. I don't need a loser like you analyzing me. He walked away, leaving Izuku shivering in the climate-controlled hallway. Bakugo was right. That was the terrible truth of it. In this society, results mattered. Ideally, heroes were noble, but functionally, heroes were winners. And Izuku was a loser. Deku-kun, Uraraka's voice broke his trance. Izuku looked up to see Ochako Uraraka and Tenya Ida running toward him. Uraraka looked frantic, her round face flushed with concern. Ida was chopping the air with his hand, though the motion lacked its usual robotic precision. We've been looking everywhere for you. Uraraka cried, skidding to a halt. She reached out, hovering her hand over his shoulder but not touching him. Are you okay? That guy, his quirk is scary. I'm fine, Izuku lied. He stood up, dusting off his pants. He forced a smile. It felt like a mask made of cracked porcelain. Just thinking, it was an dishonorable tactic, Ida declared, adjusting his glasses. To prey upon your noble defense of a classmate. You acted with integrity, Midoriya-kun. Integrity doesn't win medals, Ida-kun, Izuku said softly. The two friends fell silent. They exchanged a look of worry. They could feel the shift in him. The bright, nervous optimism was gone, replaced by a cold, gray vacuum. The second round is starting soon, Izuku said, checking the time on the wall. Todoroki versus Shinso. I need to see it. Are you sure? Uraraka asked. You don't have to watch. I have to, Izuku said, his voice hardening. I have to see what I couldn't beat. They sat in the stands of Class 1A. The atmosphere was awkward. Most of the class didn't know what to say to him. Mineta made a joke about Izuku being a zombie, but Ajiri slapped him with her tongue before he could finish. Down in the arena, Todoroki stood where Izuku had stood. Shinso stood opposite him, looking confident. He had beaten the winner of the obstacle race. He probably thought he could take the son of Endeavor too. Start. You're Endeavor's son, right? Shinso shouted immediately. Must be nice. Born with a golden spoon. Do you think you're better than us? Izuku gripped the safety rail. Don't answer, he begged silently. Todoroki, don't answer. Todoroki didn't scream. He didn't even change his expression. His mismatched eyes were cold, dead pools. He lifted his right foot. Crayak! A glacier erupted. It wasn't a fight. It was a natural disaster. A wave of ice, jagged and massive, surged across the arena faster than the eye could follow. It swallowed the concrete, it swallowed the distance, and it swallowed Shinso. In less than a second, Hitoshi Shinso was encased in ice up to his neck. He hadn't even had time to blink. The ice tower rose higher than the stadium walls, chilling the air for thousands of spectators. Shinso was shivering, his lips turning blue. He couldn't speak. He couldn't taunt. He was helpless. Todoroki Shoto advances. Midnight shivered, hugging herself. The crowd went wild. It was a display of raw, overwhelming power. It was the power of a top hero. Izuku stared at the ice. That, he realized, a cold pit forming in his stomach. That is the gap. Todoroki didn't need to worry about being brainwashed because he was simply too strong. He didn't need to engage in a battle of wills. He ended it. And Izuku? Izuku was sitting in the stands, his notebook closed in his lap. He watched the rest of the tournament in a daze. He watched Ida defeat Shiozaki with speed and precision. He watched Tokoyami overpower Yaoyorozu. Then came Uraraka versus Bakugo. Izuku watched his best friend fight his bully. He saw Uraraka's desperation. She had no super strength, no explosions. Just gravity and grit. She got beaten. Badly. But she fought. She orchestrated a meteor shower. She forced Bakugo to acknowledge her. She crawled toward him until her body gave out. When she was carried off the field, the crowd cheered for her spirit. She had lost, but she had lost like a hero. Izuku looked at his own hands again. Unscathed. Unbroken. I didn't even try, he thought. Compared to her, I'm nothing. The sun began to set, casting long, orange shadows across the UA campus. The awards ceremony was over. Bakugo stood on the podium, chained up and thrashing, furious at a victory he felt was incomplete because Todoroki hadn't used his fire. Izuku grabbed his backpack from the locker room. It felt heavier than usual. He walked to the train station alone. He kept his head down, pulling his hat low, but he could still hear the whispers. Hey, isn't that the UA kid? The one who walked out? Yeah. Talk about a choke artist. Imagine getting into the hero course and going out like that. Embarrassing. Izuku turned up the volume on his phone, blasting music to drown them out, but the lyrics didn't register. When he unlocked the door to his apartment, the smell of katsudon wafted out. His favorite. His mother, Inko, came rushing out of the kitchen. Her eyes were red and puffy, she had been crying. Izuku! She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. Oh, thank goodness. You're home, Mom, Izuku said, stiffening. She pulled back, framing his face with her hands. She looked him over, checking for broken bones, for burns, for bruises. Finding none, she let out a massive, wet sigh of relief. I was so worried when I saw you against that boy, she sobbed. But then, you just walked away. And you weren't hurt. Oh, Izuku, I'm so happy you aren't hurt. I was terrified you'd break your legs again like on TV. Izuku stared at her. She was happy. She was relieved that he had lost, because losing meant he was safe. You made katsudon? He asked, his voice hollow. Yes. To celebrate. Celebrate? Celebrate that you did your best. And that you're safe. Izuku gently removed her hands from his face. I'm not hungry, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm just really tired. Oh. Okay. I can wrap it up for later? Yeah. Thanks. He walked past her, into his room. He closed the door and locked it. The room was a shrine to All Might. Posters covering every inch of wallpaper. Action figures lining the shelves. The hero's smiling face beamed down at him from 100 different angles. I am here. I am here. I am here. Izuku walked to his desk and sat down. He didn't turn on the light. He sat in the gloom, illuminated only by the streetlights outside. He looked at the all-might figure on his desk, the Silver Age limited edition. The smile that had saved thousands. The smile that had saved Izuku. I failed you, Izuku whispered to the plastic figure. He thought about the internship offers. They would be coming in tomorrow. Bakugo would have thousands. Todoroki, thousands. Even Tokoyami and Ida would have plenty. Who would want the kid who walked out of bounds? Who would want a hero who couldn't save himself? 0. The number hung in his mind. He remembered Aizawa's threat on the first day of school. I will expel those with 0 potential. Did he have potential? He had the strongest quirk in the world, and he couldn't even snap a finger to break a trance. Izuku laid his head on his desk, burying his face in his arms. He didn't cry. He was past crying. He just felt a deep, crushing silence. The silence of the stadium. Tomorrow, he would go back to school. He would face his classmates. He would face Aizawa. He would face the reality that he was the only one in Class 1A who had failed to launch. The road to becoming the number 1 hero had just collapsed beneath his feet. Izuku closed his eyes and drifted into a fitful sleep, dreaming of white fog and a mouth that wouldn't open, while the ghosts of One for All watched him, silent and judging, from the dark. The rain in Muzidafu was usually a nuisance, a gray curtain that turned the vibrant city into a watercolor painting left out in the storm. Today, however, Izuku Midoriya welcomed it. He held his yellow umbrella low, creating a physical barrier between himself and the world. The rhythmic drumming of water against nylon was a shield against the whispers, though it couldn't drown them out completely. He stood on the train platform, his shoulders hunched. His uniform, usually a source of immense pride, felt like a costume he hadn't earned the right to wear. Hey, isn't that him? The whisper came from his left. 2 middle school students were huddled near the vending machine, stealing glances at him. The UA kid? No way. He looks so small. It is him. The one who walked out of bounds. My dad was yelling at the TV during his match. Said he bet 1,000 yen on him and lost it all. Man, that's embarrassing. Imagine getting into the hero course and freezing up like that. I bet he bribed his way in. Izuku tightened his grip on the umbrella handle until the plastic creaked. He stared at his red shoes, the same shoes he had worn when the doctor told him he was quirkless, the same shoes he wore when he walked away from Shinso without throwing a punch. Ignore it, he told himself. You just have to get to school. Just get to class. But the train ride was no better. The morning news played on the small LCD screens above the doors. It was a highlight reel of the sports festival. There was Bakugo, a feral explosion of talent, chained to the podium but radiating power. There was Todoroki, a masterpiece of ice and fire. There was Tokoyami, dark and mysterious, and then, a brief clip of the blunders. It showed Izuku's match. The camera angle was high, showing the moment he stopped, turned, and marched out of bounds like a toy soldier. The commentary was merciless. A disappointing showing from the class representative of 1A. Nerves? Or a lack of preparation? Izuku closed his eyes, turning up the volume on his headphones. But the silence inside his head was louder than the music. It was the silence of One for All, the quirk that remained dormant, heavy, and judgmental beneath his skin. Class 1A was buzzing. The atmosphere was electric, a stark contrast to the gloom outside. For most of the students, the sports festival had been a debutante ball. They had been seen. They had been recognized. Man, people were actually recognizing me on the way here. Eijiro Kirishima was grinning, showing off his shark-like teeth. Some old lady called me tough guy. It was awesome. I got stared at quite a bit too, Mina Ashido chirped, leaning back in her chair. Though I think it's mostly because my horns are hard to miss. But still. It feels like we're actual pros now. It's terrifying, Kaminari groaned, though he looked pleased. One slip up and we're viral memes. But hey, worth it for the fame, right? Izuku slid the door open quietly. The chatter didn't stop, but it stuttered. Heads turned. For a fraction of a second, the joyous energy in the room curdled into something awkward. Morning, Midoriya, Kirishima said, his voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. Morning, Izuku murmured, keeping his eyes on the floor as he walked to his desk. He felt their gazes. He knew they weren't trying to be cruel. Class 1A was full of good people. But their pity was a physical weight. He could feel Ida stiffen in the seat in front of him. He could feel Uraraka shifting, preparing to say something comforting that would only make him feel worse. Deku-kun, Uraraka started, her voice soft. It's raining pretty hard, huh? Yeah, Izuku said, pulling his notebook out of his bag. He opened it to a blank page. He didn't have any notes to take on his classmates' fights. He hadn't analyzed them. He felt he didn't have the right to analyze them anymore. Who was he to critique their form when he couldn't even stay in the ring? Across the room, Katsuki Bakugo sat with his feet on his desk. He didn't look at Izuku. He was staring out the window, his expression a mixture of boredom and simmering rage. Since the festival, Bakugo hadn't yelled at him once. He hadn't called him a nerd. He hadn't told him to die. He had simply ignored him. To Bakugo, Izuku had ceased to be a rival and had gone back to being a pebble on the side of the road. The doors slid open again, and Shota Aizawa walked in. The room fell silent instantly. Aizawa looked as tired as ever, though his bandages were gone, replaced by a small scar under his eye, a souvenir from the USJ. He walked to the podium, his capture scarf loose around his neck. Morning, Aizawa grumbled. Reviewing the festival, most of you did well. You showed the world the potential of UA. He scanned the room, his dark eyes lingering on a few students before passing over Izuku entirely. Today is a crucial day for your future, Aizawa continued. We're discussing hero informatics. Specifically your internships. The class erupted in excited whispers. This was it. The real deal. Calm down, Aizawa said, his quirk flashing red for a split second, silencing them. Usually, you draft hero names first, but this year, the interest levels are skewed. The pros have sent in their nominations for who they want to mentor for a week. These numbers are based on your performance at the festival. He pressed a button on a remote. The blackboard was covered by a projection. A bar graph appeared. The numbers are usually more balanced, Aizawa said dryly. But this year, there was a clear divide. Izuku looked up. He couldn't help it. His heart hammered against his ribs. Todoroki Shoto, 4,123. Bakugo Katsuki, 3,556. Tokoyami Fumikage, 360. Ida Tenya 301. Kaminari Denki, 272. Yayorozu Momo, 108. Kirishima Aijiro, 68. Uraraka Ochako, 20. Siro Hanta 14. The list went on. The numbers dropped sharply after the top two. It was a brutal visualization of popularity and perceived power. As you can see, Aizawa said, Todoroki and Bakugo garnered the majority of interest. It's an evaluation of raw power and immediate utility. Those with lower numbers, or no numbers, shouldn't be discouraged. The pros are busy, and some prefer to scout in person later. Izuku scanned the list frantically. He looked for the kanji of his name. Midoriya. Midoriya. He saw Mineta Minoru, 5. He saw Kota Koji, 3. He saw Sato Rikido, 2. His eyes reached the bottom of the list. Midoriya Izuku, 0. The number wasn't just a lack of offers. It was a statement. It was a void. He stared at it. The 0 seemed to pulse. It was a perfect circle, an endless loop of failure. 0. Not one hero. Not a single agency in the entire country of Japan saw the boy who broke his fingers in the obstacle race, or the boy who walked out of bounds, and thought, I can work with that. Even the heroes who specialized in rescue, or mental quirks, or strategy, none of them wanted him. Mineta got 5? Kaminari whispered, sounding scandalized. How? Did they not see him clinging to Yayorozu? It's a specific demographic, Mineta whispered back, trembling with joy. They appreciate my style. Izuku felt the blood drain from his face. Mineta had offers. The boy who was terrified of everything had offers. Midoriya. Uraraka whispered. She had seen it too. It's okay, Izuku whispered back, though his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I expected it. I didn't do anything. Those of you with offers will be given a list to choose from, Aizawa said, turning off the projector. Those without offers will choose from a list of agencies that have open enrollment for UA students. You will still participate in an internship, but you won't be requested specifically. Aizawa paused. He looked directly at Izuku. However, the teacher added, internships are not mandatory vacations. They are dangerous. And if you are not prepared, you will be a liability. Keep that in mind when you choose. The afternoon was dedicated to choosing hero names. Midnight took over the class, her exuberance a sharp contrast to the somber mood hanging over Izuku's desk. Your name is your brand, she declared. It represents who you want to be. Pick carefully, because you might be stuck with it for life. Students went up one by one. Shining hero. I cannot stop twinkling, Aoyama announced. Alien Queen. Ashido tried, and was rejected. Froppy, Ajri said to general acclaim. Then Bakugo marched up. King Explosion Murder. No, Midnight said flatly. Then Ida? He walked up stiffly. He wrote Tenya. He didn't use his brother's name. Not yet. He looked haunted, his mind clearly in a hospital room in Hosa City. Then, it was Izuku's turn. He walked to the podium. The chalk felt dusty and dry in his hand. He stared at the blackboard. In another life, perhaps he would have written Deku. He would have turned the insult into a badge of honor. He would have declared to the world that he was the Deku who does his best. But he couldn't do it. You can do it, Deku! Uraraka cheered softly. But the word Deku didn't sound like you can do it anymore. To Izuku, right now, it sounded like what Bakugo had always meant, defenseless Izuku. Useless. He wrote his name, Midoriya. Just your name? Midnight asked, tilting her head. It's a bit plain. Are you sure? I'm not a hero yet, Izuku said quietly, staring at his shoes. I don't have a hero name because I haven't done anything heroic. Until I can prove I belong here. I'm just Midoriya. Midnight's expression softened. She exchanged a glance with Aizawa, who was sleeping in the corner, or pretending to. Very well, she said gently. Midoriya it is. He walked back to his seat. The silence in the room was heavy. It wasn't the respectful silence of awe. It was the uncomfortable silence of watching someone give up a piece of themselves. In the faculty lounge, the air was thick with the smell of cheap coffee. Shota Aizawa sat at his desk, sorting through the internship paperwork. He slammed a stack of papers down, the noise startling present Mike. You're in a mood, Mike said. I'm annoyed, Aizawa muttered. He looked toward the door as it opened. All Might entered. The symbol of peace was in his skinny form, wearing a baggy yellow suit that made him look like a scarecrow. He looked exhausted. All Might, Aizawa said, not looking up. We need to talk about Midoriya. All Might flinched. He walked over to his desk, sinking into the chair with a groan. I know. The nomination's 0. It is disheartening. It's not just disheartening, Aizawa said, swiveling his chair to face him. It's a wake-up call. The kid has power. We saw it in the entrance exam. We saw it in the obstacle race. But he has absolutely no idea how to use it without destroying himself, and his mental state is fragile at best. He is young, All Might defended weakly. He has a heavy burden. He has a burden because you gave it to him without teaching him how to carry it, Aizawa snapped. All Might's eyes widened. Aizawa-kun, you don't know. I don't know the details of your relationship, and I don't care to, Aizawa interrupted. But I know a soldier who is being sent to war without a gun. Midoriya failed the sports festival not because he was weak, but because he was unprepared. Shinso's quirk is simple to counter if you have discipline. Midoriya panicked. He defaulted to fear. Aizawa picked up a sheet of paper, the blank nomination form for Midoriya. He needs an internship that will strip him down and rebuild his fundamentals. Who are you sending him to? All Might sighed, rubbing his temples. I had hoped Gran Torino would take an interest. I sent him a letter before the festival. But after the match. Gran Torino called me this morning. He said, I don't have time to babysit a kid who can't even control his own mind. He refused. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. So the old man is out. Who's left? I don't know, All Might admitted. I was thinking, perhaps I could train him myself during the week. Take him back to Dagoba Beach. Work on his physical vessel. If his body is stronger, perhaps the power will be easier to control. Aizawa stared at All Might for a long, uncomfortable minute. Then, he let out a sharp, derisive snort. More muscle training? That's your solution? The kid can already smash a giant robot. His problem isn't his biceps, All Might. It's his head. And his combat instincts. He telegraphs every move. He flinches before he strikes. He overthinks until he freezes. Aizawa stood up, grabbing his capture scarf. If you send him to the beach to lift trash for a week, he will come back exactly the same, a glass cannon with a cracked psyche. He will fall behind. And in this class, falling behind means dying. What do you suggest? All Might asked, looking genuinely lost. Leave him to me, Aizawa said. If no agency wants him, then Yui will take him. I'm running a remedial course for the students who failed the midterms or didn't get nominations. Usually, it's for general ed students trying to transfer in. But this year, I'll make an exception. You. All Might looked skeptical. You are harsh, Aizawa. He doesn't need a cheerleader, Aizawa said, walking to the door. He needs a teacher. The meeting with All Might was brief and crushing. They met in the small lounge near the lunchroom. Izuku sat on the sofa, his hands gripping his knees. All Might sat opposite him, pouring tea. 0 offers, Izuku said, staring at the steam rising from the cup. I guess. I shouldn't be surprised. It is merely a setback, my boy. All Might said, buffing up for a moment to flash a smile before deflating again. Many great heroes started slow. Why, even I. Well, actually I had many offers, but that is beside the point. Izuku didn't smile. Gran Torino? Izuku asked. You mentioned him before. Your old teacher? All Might winced. He couldn't lie to the boy. He saw the festival. He feels you are not quite ready for his level of instruction yet. He is a harsh man, Midoriya. Perhaps it is for the best. Not ready. The words cut deep. Even All Might's teacher thought he was a lost cause. So, Izuku said, his voice trembling. What do I do? I have to do an internship. It's a requirement. I was thinking, All Might said, leaning forward. We could return to our roots. The beach park. We can focus on maintaining your physical form. We can analyze the footage of the festival together. A week of intensive study and conditioning. Izuku looked at All Might. He saw the kindness in the man's eyes, the desperate desire to help. But he also saw the lack of a plan. Lift more trash. Study more notes. It felt like moving backward. Everyone else was going to learn from pro heroes. Ida was going to Hosu. Uraraka was going to go ahead to learn martial arts. Bakugo was going to best genist. And Izuku was going to pick up trash. Is that the best way? Izuku asked softly. It worked before. All Might said. It built the foundation, but the foundation is cracking, Izuku whispered. Before All Might could answer, the door opened. Aizawa stood there, looking bored. Midoriya, Aizawa said. A word. Izuku jumped up. Yes, sensei. Aizawa looked at All Might, giving him a curt nod, then beckoned Izuku into the hall. He led him a few steps away, leaning against the lockers. I heard the plan, Aizawa said bluntly. Beach training. Trash pickup. Izuku looked down. Yes, sir. Do you think that will help you? Izuku hesitated. He wanted to defend All Might. He wanted to say yes. But the image of Shinso's smile, of the ice wall, of the 0 on the board, it stopped him. I don't know, Izuku admitted. I feel like I'm missing something. Something everyone else has. You are, Aizawa said. You're missing combat experience. You're missing technique. You rely on your quirk as a crutch, and when that crutch is kicked away, like Shinso did, you fall. Aizawa pulled a form out of his pocket. It was an internship permission slip, but the agency field was filled out with a stamp, Yui High School Remedial Heroics. No agency requested you, Aizawa said. And frankly, I wouldn't sign off on you going to a random D-list agency just to fetch coffee. You'd learn nothing. He held the paper out to Izuku. Stay here next week. With me. Izuku stared at the paper. With you? It won't be fun, Aizawa warned. It won't be like the beach. I'm not going to cheer you on. I'm going to make you miserable. I'm going to teach you how to fight without breaking your bones. I'm going to teach you how to capture a villain without punching them into the stratosphere. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. I'm going to teach you how to survive. Izuku looked at the paper. Remedial heroics. It sounded like a punishment. It sounded like summer school for failures. But then he looked at Aizawa. The man who had erased the villain's quirks at the USJ. The man who fought with a scarf and dry eyes against monsters. A man who didn't rely on raw power, but on skill. Power isn't enough, Izuku realized. I have the greatest power in the world, and I'm useless. I need skill. Izuku took the paper. His hand shook, but his grip was firm. I'll do it, Izuku said. Please teach me, Aizawa smirked. It was a terrifying expression. Don't regret it, kid. Monday morning. 5 a.m. Gym Gamma. Don't be late. The rest of the week passed in a blur of preparation. Class 1A was a chaotic mess of suitcases and costumes. Everyone was exchanging contact info, promising to text about their internships. I'm going to learn so much from Iwabumi, Momo said, clutching her bags. She's a top-tier celebrity hero. I'm going to fourth kind, Kirishima said, punching his palm. It's gonna be manly. Where are you going, Deku-kun? Uraraka asked as they stood by the school gates on the final day. Izuku gripped the strap of his backpack. He wasn't carrying a suitcase. He wasn't going to a train station. I'm staying here, Izuku said softly. Here? Uraraka blinked. At UA? Yeah. Aizawa-sensei, he offered to train me. Since I didn't get any offers, Ida stopped adjusting his glasses. He looked at Izuku with a strange intensity. Aizawa-sensei is a harsh master. But he is rational. If he sees value in training you personally, then it is a high honor, Midoriya-kun. Maybe, Izuku said. Ida hesitated. He looked toward the train station, toward the line that led to Hosu. His eyes were hard, the light in them dimmed by grief and anger. I must go. The train to Hosu leaves soon. Ida-kun, Izuku said, stepping forward. A sudden wave of anxiety washed over him. He remembered the look on Ida's face when he chose his hero name. Tenya. Are you okay? Ida turned back, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Of course. I am simply eager to learn. Internship is a time for growth, is it not? Right, Izuku said, unconvinced. Just be careful, okay? The hero killer is in Hosu. I know, Ida said. His voice was cold. That is why I am going. He turned and marched away, his stride mechanical. Izuku watched him go. He wanted to run after him. He wanted to say, don't do it. Don't go looking for him. But what right did he have? Ida was one of the top students. Ida had offers. Izuku was the remedial student. He's been acting weird, Uraraka said worriedly. Yeah, Izuku agreed. I hope he's okay. Well, Uraraka said, bouncing on her heels to dispel the gloom. I gotta go too. Gunhead is waiting. Good luck with Aizawa-sensei, Deku-kun. Don't let him erase you. She gave him a thumbs up and ran off toward the station. One by one, they all left. Bakugo walked past without a word, just a scoff as he saw Izuku standing still. Todoroki nodded politely and left. Soon, the courtyard was empty. Izuku stood alone at the gate. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty school grounds. It was just him and the massive glass building of UA. He felt a pang of loneliness so sharp it stole his breath. They were all moving forward. They were stepping into the world of pros. And he was staying behind in the nest. 0, he thought again. He clenched his fist. He felt the power of one for all thrumming in his veins. It felt restless. Fine, Izuku whispered to the empty air. If I have to start from 0, then I'll start from 0. I'll crawl if I have to. He turned his back on the train station and walked back toward the dorms. That night, Izuku couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence of the dorm was oppressive. Usually, he could hear Kirishima laughing or Kaminari playing music. Now, the building was a tomb. He got up and walked to the common room. It was dark. He sat on the couch, pulling his knees to his chest. He turned on the TV, keeping the volume low. The news was talking about Ingenium. The hero, Ida's brother, had been forced to retire due to severe spinal injuries inflicted by the hero killer, Stain. The hero killer remains at large in Hosa City, the reporter said gravely. Police are warning all local heroes to exercise extreme caution. Izuku stared at the screen. The image of Stain flashed, a jagged, terrifying figure with blades and a blood-red scarf. Ida went to Hosu. The realization hit him again, harder this time. Ida hadn't chosen Hosa for the training. He had chosen it for revenge. Izuku reached for his phone. He opened his messages with Ida. Midoriya, hey Ida-kun. Just checking in? Did you make it okay? He waited. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. No reply. Izuku's stomach churned. He typed another message. Midoriya, please be careful. Don't do anything reckless. He stared at the screen for 10 minutes. No read receipt. He put the phone down. I should tell someone, he thought. I should tell All Might. Or Aizawa. But tell them what? That Ida was sad? That he chose an internship in a dangerous city? They already knew that. If Izuku raised the alarm now, he would look paranoid. He would look like the weak link who was projecting his own fears onto his capable friend. Ida is smart, Izuku reasoned, trying to convince himself. He's the class rep. He follows the rules. He won't fight a serial killer alone. But the doubt lingered, a cold seed in his gut. He turned off the TV and sat in the dark. Tomorrow, his training with Aizawa would begin. He had to be rested. He had to be ready. He couldn't afford to worry about everyone else when he could barely take care of himself. Focus on you, Aizawa had said. Save yourself first. Izuku closed his eyes. I'll get stronger, he whispered to the darkness. I promise. I'll catch up to all of you. But as the wind howled outside the dorms, rattling the windows, Izuku Midoriya felt very small, and very far away from being a hero. The number 0 hung over his head, a guillotine waiting to drop. Monday morning. 5 a.m. The real test was about to begin. The silence of UA High School was heavier than any weight All Might had ever asked him to lift. Usually, the mornings were a cacophony of youth. There was the sound of Ada berating classmates for being 30 seconds late, Ashido's high-pitched laughter echoing down the corridors, and the constant, thumping bass of Bakugo's irritation. But today, at 4:45 a.m. on a Monday, the dorms were a tomb. Izuku Midoriya sat on the edge of his bed, tying his red sneakers. His fingers felt stiff. The laces seemed to mock him, twisting into knots that mirrored the ones in his stomach. He was the leftover. The remainder. While his friends were currently waking up in agency barracks, preparing to patrol the streets of Tokyo, Hosu, and Fukuoka, Izuku was here. He was grounded, in every sense of the word. Grounded by his lack of offers, and grounded by gravity. Unable to fly like the symbol of peace he aspired to be, he stood up, grabbing his gym bag. He checked his phone one last time. To Tenya Ida, subject, good luck. Message, hope the first day goes well, Ida-kun. Let me know you're safe. Status, sent. Read receipt, none. Izuku frowned. It had been 24 hours since Ida had replied to anyone in the class group chat. He's probably just busy, Izuku rationalized, though the cold pit in his stomach suggested otherwise. Internships are demanding. He's focusing. He shoved the phone into his pocket and left the room. The hallway was dark, the emergency lights casting long, eerie shadows. He walked past the empty rooms, past Uraraka's, past Ida's, past Todoroki's. He stepped out into the pre-dawn chill. The campus was shrouded in mist. The massive glass structures of the main building loomed like sleeping giants. Start from 0, he whispered to himself, the vapor of his breath swirling in the air. He jogged toward Gym Gamma. Gym Gamma was a labyrinth of concrete pillars and industrial pipes, designed to simulate complex urban terrain. It was usually bustling with rescue drills, but today, the lights were dimmed, illuminating only a central clearing of gray mats. Shota Aizawa stood in the center of the mats. He wasn't wearing his sleeping bag. He was in his full hero costume, his capture weapon coiled loosely around his neck like a slumbering viper. His hands were in his pockets, and his eyes were fixed on the entrance. But he wasn't alone. Standing a few feet away from Aizawa, looking as if he would rather be anywhere else on Earth, was Hitoshi Shinso. Izuku froze in the doorway. The boy who had brainwashed him. The boy who had humiliated him in front of the world. Shinso looked just as tired as he had at the festival, his purple hair a messy spikeball, his posture slouched. He was wearing the standard UA gym uniform, same as Izuku. "You're late," Aizawa said, though the clock on the wall read 4:58 a.m. I'm early," Izuku stammered, walking onto the mats. He couldn't take his eyes off Shinso. "In heroics, on time is late," Aizawa drawled. He looked between the two boys. "I assume introductions aren't necessary. You both met in the ring. Or rather, one of you met the ring, and the other walked out of it." Shinso let out a sharp, dry snort. Izuku flinched. Why is he here?" Izuku asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. "Because he failed too," Aizawa said bluntly. "Shinso has a powerful quirk, but he relies on it entirely. Once Todoroki refused to speak, Shinso was helpless. He has no physical combat skills. He has no situational awareness. If he were a pro, and his quirk failed, he would be dead." Aizawa turned his dark eyes onto Izuku. "And you? You have a quirk that destroys your body, yet you have no idea how to fight without it. You rely on the threat of power rather than the application of skill. When your mind was compromised, your body simply obeyed the command to lose because it had no other training to fall back on." Aizawa uncoiled his scarf, letting it hang ominously. "Nobody wanted either of you. So, for the next week, you belong to me." "What are we doing?" Shinso asked, his voice raspy. "Mental resistance training?" "No," Aizawa said. His hair suddenly floated up, his eyes glowing an eerie red. A wave of localized pressure washed over the gym. Izuku felt the familiar hum of One for All vanish deep inside him, locked away behind a steel door. Shinso stiffened as well. "For the next week," Aizawa said, his voice dropping to a growl, "quirks are banned. If I see a flash of green lightning, or if I hear a single attempt at mind control, you are expelled. Immediately. I have the paperwork ready." He pointed a finger at them. "Come at me. Both of you. Kill me if you can." The first hour was a massacre. It wasn't a fight. It was a lesson in humility. Izuku lunged forward, throwing a right hook. It was a punch he had seen All Might throw 1,000 times on YouTube. It was wide, telegraphed, and full of spirit. Aizawa didn't even take his hands out of his pockets. He simply stepped to the left, hooked his foot behind Izuku's ankle, and let momentum do the rest. Izuku slammed face first into the mat with a sickening thud. "Too wide," Aizawa stated. "You're winding up. You think because you have super strength, you need to throw haymakers. In a real fight, a big swing is just an invitation to get stabbed." Before Izuku could scramble up, Shinso tried to capitalize on the distraction. He rushed Aizawa from behind, trying to tackle him. Aizawa dropped his center of gravity, grabbed Shinso by the collar of his gym shirt, and flipped him over his shoulder. Shinso landed on top of Izuku. They groaned in unison, a tangle of limbs and bruised egos. "Pathetic," Aizawa said, looking down at them. "Get up." They got up. They attacked again. Izuku tried a kick. Aizawa caught his leg, twisted it painfully, and shoved him backward. "You're off balance," Aizawa criticized. "You're always leaning forward, anticipating the impact of your quirk. You fight like you're expecting to blow the other person away. Without that explosion, you're just falling over." This continued for 3 hours. There were no breaks. There was no water. Just the squeak of sneakers on mats, the sound of bodies hitting the floor, and Aizawa's monotone critique dismantling their entire understanding of combat. Izuku was panting heavily, sweat stinging his eyes. His nose was bleeding slightly from a face plant. His muscles screamed. "I can't hit him," Izuku thought desperately. "He's not even using his scarf. He's just moving." He looked at Shinso. The general ed student was faring even worse. Shinso was gasping for air, clutching his side. He wasn't athletic. He had coasted on his quirk his whole life. "Why?" Shinso wheezed, glaring at Aizawa. "Why do we have to learn this? I'm not a brawler. I'm a mental type. And what happens when you're cornered?" Aizawa snapped, sweeping Shinso's legs out from under him again. What happens when you're facing a villain who is deaf? Or a Noma that doesn't think? Do you ask them nicely to pause while you call for backup? Aizawa grabbed Izuku's outstretched arm. Izuku had tried a desperate grab, and locked his joint, forcing Izuku to his knees. There is no such thing as a mental type or a power type in the field, Aizawa hissed into Izuku's ear. There are only those who survive, and those who die. Right now you are both dead. He released Izuku, shoving him away. Take 5 minutes. Drink water. Then we start on capture mechanics. Izuku collapsed against a concrete pillar, his chest heaving. He grabbed his water bottle and downed half of it in one gulp. He felt lightheaded. Shinso sat a few feet away, wiping his face with a towel. He looked miserable. The silence between them was thick with unresolved tension. They hadn't spoken since the match at the festival. You're analyzing him, aren't you? Izuku jumped slightly. Shinso was looking at him. What? I can hear you muttering, Shinso said, his voice dripping with irritation. Even when you're getting your ass kicked, you're muttering about his footwork. Hi, it's a habit, Izuku admitted, looking down. Sorry. Shinso took a sip of water, his eyes narrowing. Must be nice. What? To have a quirk like yours, Shinso said bitterly. Strength. Speed. Flashy. The kind of quirk that makes people cheer. And you still managed to lose to a villain quirk like mine. Izuku gripped his water bottle tight. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't mean to. That makes it worse, Shinso retorted. I trained my whole life to get into the hero course. I studied. I worked. But the entrance exam was all robots. Physical destruction. I didn't stand a chance. And you have the perfect quirk for it, and you walk out of bounds because you got your feelings hurt. He insulted my friend, Izuku said, his voice firming up. So what? Shinso snapped. Heroes get insulted. Villains don't play nice. If you can't handle trash talk, you don't belong here. Izuku opened his mouth to argue, to defend Ojiro, to defend himself. But the words died in his throat. Shinso was right. Bakugo had said it. Aizawa had said it. And now Shinso. I have power, Izuku thought. But I don't have the mindset. I treat being a hero like a fantasy. Like if I just try hard and have a good heart, I'll win. But that's not how the world works. You're right, Izuku said quietly. Shinso blinked, surprised by the concession. I have a blessing, Izuku continued, looking at his scarred hand. And I wasted it at the festival. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm letting Aizawa-sensei beat me up. Because I don't want to be the guy who walked out anymore. He looked up at Shinso. And you're here too. Aizawa-sensei sees potential in you. He wouldn't waste his time otherwise. Shinso looked away, scoffing, but the hostility in his posture softened just a fraction. Whatever. Let's just get this over with. This is binding cloth, Aizawa said, holding up 2 rolls of gray fabric. They weren't the metallic alloy weave that Aizawa used. They were heavy, durable cotton canvas. Thick, unwieldy, and lifeless. My weapon is a carbon fiber alloy wire woven into the fabric, Aizawa explained. It responds to my movements. Yours are just cloth. They are dead weight. Your goal is to make them alive. He tossed a roll to each of them. The objective is simple. Use the cloth to restrain the target. Do not use knots. Use friction and leverage. He pointed to a series of wooden dummies set up around the gym. Wrap the arms. Immobilize the legs. You have until lunch. Izuku looked at the cloth in his hands. It was about 30 feet long. He tried to throw it like Aizawa did. It flopped pitifully onto the floor a meter away. It's not a lasso, Aizawa said from the sidelines, where he was applying eye drops. It's an extension of your limb. Don't throw it with your arm. Throw it with your hip. Izuku tried again. And again. And again. It was maddening. The cloth tangled. It snagged on his own feet. It hit the dummy and slid off harmlessly. He tried to analyze it. Okay, if I rotate my wrist at a 45-degree angle and snap my elbow. Stop thinking, Aizawa barked. Izuku froze. Sensei? You're doing math in your head, Aizawa said, walking over. I can see your brain gears grinding. You're calculating trajectory. By the time you finish the equation, The villain has already stabbed you. Aizawa grabbed the cloth from Izuku's hand. In a blur of motion, he whipped it out. The cloth snapped like a whip, wrapped around the dummy's neck 3 times, and tightened. It's a feeling, Aizawa said, uncoiling it just as fast. You have to know where the tip of the cloth is without looking at it. Just like you know where your fingertips are. He handed the cloth back. Again, Izuku grit his teeth. He threw the cloth. It missed. He picked it up. Threw it. Missed. Beside him, Shinso was struggling too, cursing under his breath as he got tangled in his own weapon like a kitten in yarn. This is impossible, Shinso muttered. Aizawa-sensei does it, Izuku panted, wiping sweat from his forehead. He's a pro. He started somewhere, Izuku said. He looked at the cloth. He closed his eyes for a second, trying to imagine the cloth as part of his arm, not a tool he was holding. He threw it. The cloth sailed through the air. The tip slapped against the dummy's shoulder, and fell off. Better, Aizawa said. Again, lunch was a silent affair. They ate nutrient jelly packs and rice balls sitting on the gym floor. Aizawa had forbidden them from leaving the building. The outside world is a distraction, he had said. Izuku checked his phone again. Still no message from Ida. The anxiety was beginning to mutate into panic. Why wouldn't he reply? Was he in trouble? Was he being scolded by Manuel, the hero he was interning with? Or was he doing something he shouldn't? You're checking that phone every 5 minutes, Aizawa said. He was leaning against a pillar, drinking a pouch of juice. Izuku hurriedly put the phone away. Sorry. I'm just waiting for a message from a friend. Ida Tenya? Aizawa asked. Izuku looked up, startled. How did you? I'm your homeroom teacher, Midoriya. I noticed things. I noticed Ida was emotionally compromised after his brother's incident. I noticed he chose an internship in Hosu, the exact location of the attack, despite having better offers in Tokyo. Aizawa's eyes bore into Izuku. And I noticed you looking at him like you were watching a man walk off a cliff. Izuku swallowed hard. I'm worried about him. He wasn't himself. And what can you do about it? Aizawa asked coldly. I can check on him. I can text him, and if he doesn't answer? What then? Do you run to Hosu? If he's in danger, Aizawa interrupted, his voice sharp, and you go there now, in your current state, you will simply provide the hero killer with a second victim. The words hit Izuku like a physical blow. You have 0 combat capability without breaking your bones, Aizawa continued relentlessly. You have 0 license to use your quirk. You are a student. A remedial student at that. If Ida makes a mistake, that is on him. If you abandon your training to chase a ghost, that is on you. But heroes save people. Izuku cried out. How can I sit here doing drills when my friend might be? You can't save anyone if you are dead, Aizawa said. He pushed off the pillar and walked toward them. This is the hardest lesson, Midoriya. You have a savior complex. You think it's your job to fix everything. But you are not All Might. You are not a god. You are a child with broken arms. Aizawa gestured to the mats. Stand up. Afternoon session. Evasion. The objective was simple. Don't get caught. Aizawa stood at one end of the gym. Izuku and Shinso stood at the other. I will use my capture weapon, Aizawa announced. If I wrap you, you lose. If you last 10 minutes, you win. Start. Izuku and Shinso scattered. Izuku scrambled up a set of industrial pipes, seeking high ground. He needed to break line of sight. He needed to think. Aizawa-sensei is fast. He moves in straight lines. If I can use the pillars to block his tape. But his mind wasn't fully there. Part of him was in Hosu. He imagined Ida cornering Stain in a dark alley. He imagined the glint of a blade. Is he okay? Did I do enough? Should I have told All Might? A gray blur shot past his ear. Izuku yelped, losing his footing on the pipe. He slipped, hanging by one hand. Distracted, Aizawa's voice echoed from below. The capture tape surged upward like a living serpent. It wrapped around Izuku's waist, tight and unyielding. With a sharp yank, Aizawa pulled him down. Izuku flew through the air, crashing onto the mats below. The air left his lungs in a wheeze. You're dead, Aizawa said, standing over him. I slipped, Izuku gasped. You hesitated, Aizawa corrected. You were thinking about something else. In a fight, hesitation is fatal. He turned to look for Shinso, who was hiding behind a crate. Aizawa shot his scarf out, punching through the wood of the crate and snagging Shinso by the ankle, dragging him out screaming, "Both of you!" Aizawa sighed, rubbing his eyes. Hopeless. He released them from the tape. "Midoriya," Aizawa said. "Give me your phone." Izuku clutched his pocket. "What?" "Why? It's a tether," Aizawa said. "It's pulling your focus away from the here and now. You are physically here, but mentally you are in Hosu. You cannot train like that." "But what if he calls?" Izuku pleaded. "If there is an emergency, the school will be notified." "Give it to me." Izuku hesitated. Every instinct told him to keep the connection open. But he looked at Aizawa's stern face. He looked at the bruises forming on his own arms from the day's failures. He realized Aizawa was right. He was half-assing this. He was worrying about a scenario he couldn't control while failing to control the one thing he could, his own body. Slowly, reluctantly, Izuku pulled the phone out. He handed it to Aizawa. Aizawa took it and dropped it into one of his utility pouches. "You get it back when you can land a hit on me. Or when the week is over. Whichever comes first." Aizawa took a combat stance. Again. Hide. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of exhaustion. Without the phone, without the constant checking, Izuku was forced to exist in the moment. And the moment was painful. He ran. He climbed. He rolled. Aizawa was a demon. He was everywhere at once. He moved with a silence that was terrifying. But slowly, very slowly, Izuku began to see patterns. He watched Aizawa's shoulders. Before he fired the tape, his left shoulder dipped slightly. Before he jumped, his knees bent at a specific angle. He preserves energy, Izuku realized as he panted behind a concrete barrier. He doesn't use flashy moves. He takes the shortest path between 2 points. Minimum effort, maximum efficiency. It was the opposite of All Might. All Might was an explosion. Aizawa was a scalpel. Izuku looked at his own hands. He had been trying to be a cannon. Maybe he needed to be a knife. "Shinso," Izuku whispered. Shinso was crouching nearby, looking ready to pass out. "What?" "He tracks us by sound," Izuku whispered. "And he predicts where we'll go based on logic. If we want to last 10 minutes, we have to be illogical." "Illogical?" "We have to bait him. You go left. Make noise. I'll go right, but I'll double back." "Why should I be the bait?" Shinso hissed. "Because you're slower," Izuku said bluntly. "And because if you get caught, I can try to free you with a cloth." Shinso glared at him, but he nodded. "Fine. But if you leave me hanging, I'll brainwash you into clucking like a chicken." "Deal." Shinso broke cover, stomping his feet on the metal grating. "Hey! Over here!" Aizawa turned instantly, his scarf lashing out. Shinso dived, barely missing the capture weapon. He scrambled away, drawing Aizawa's attention. Izuku moved. He didn't run away. He ran toward Aizawa, keeping low, using the pillars as cover. He moved silently, stepping toe to heel like he had read about in stealth manuals but never practiced. Aizawa cornered Shinso. The tape wrapped around the purple-haired boy's torso. "Gotcha," Aizawa said. "Now!" Izuku launched himself from a pipe above. He didn't aim a punch. He aimed his own binding cloth. He threw it with his hip, not his arm. The heavy canvas unrolled. It didn't wrap perfectly, but it looped around Aizawa's capture weapon, the part that was holding Shinso. Izuku yanked with all his weight. "Shinso, pull!" Izuku screamed. For a split second, Aizawa was off balance. The combined weight of 2 boys pulling in opposite directions tugged him forward. It wasn't a defeat. It wasn't a hit. But for 1 second, Aizawa stumbled. Then, with a sigh that sounded almost impressed, Aizawa activated his quirk. He glared at Izuku. Izuku froze, the fear of the erasure paralyzing him for a microsecond. Aizawa twisted his body, used the tension of the cloth against them, and yanked both boys into the center of the room. They collided with a groan. 8 minutes, Aizawa announced, checking his watch. He looked down at the pile of students. "You used your teammate as bait. Cruel. But rational." Aizawa looked at Izuku. "And you You stopped winding up. You waited for an opening. Aizawa offered a hand to Izuku. Izuku stared at it. The erasure hero was helping him up. You're still sloppy, Aizawa said as he pulled Izuku to his feet. Your stealth is loud. Your aim is terrible. But for the first time today, you were thinking like a hero, not a victim. Izuku rubbed his sore elbow. A small spark of pride ignited in his chest. It wasn't the roaring fire of One for All. It was a small, quiet flame. But it was his. Thank you, Sensei, Izuku breathed. Don't thank me yet, Aizawa said, a predatory grin returning to his face. That was just the warm-up. Sun's going down. Night training begins now. By the time Aizawa dismissed them, it was 9 p.m. Izuku's body felt like jelly. Every muscle fiber twitched involuntarily. He had bruises on his bruises. He and Shinso walked back to the dorms in silence. The hostility from the morning had evaporated, replaced by the shared camaraderie of trauma survivors. He's a monster, Shinso muttered as they reached the dorm entrance. Yeah, Izuku agreed. He tried to open the door, but his hand was shaking so bad he dropped his key. Shinso bent down and picked it up. He handed it to Izuku. Hey, Shinso said. That plan, with the doubling back. It wasn't bad. Izuku managed a tired smile. Thanks. Your distraction was really loud, Shinso smirked. I try. They entered the common room. It was dark and empty. I'm going to sleep for a week, Shinso announced. Heading for the Gen Ed dorms, he had been given a temporary pass to crash in the 1A spare room to save travel time. Shinso, Izuku called out. Shinso stopped. Tomorrow, let's last 10 minutes. Shinso looked at him. Then he nodded. Yeah. Let's aim for 11. Izuku watched him go, then turned to the stairs. He dragged himself up to his room. He didn't have his phone. Aizawa still had it. He sat on his bed. The silence of the room usually filled him with anxiety, but tonight, his mind was too exhausted to spiral. He looked at his hands. They were wrapped in sports tape Aizawa had given him. He closed his eyes and replayed the moment he had stumbled Aizawa. He felt the shift in his hips. The leverage. I don't need to be All Might, Izuku thought, the realization settling into his bones. All Might saves people with a smile and a smash. Aizawa saves people by being efficient. By being smart. If I want to master One for All, I need to be efficient. He lay back on the pillow. Somewhere in Hosu, Ida was out there. Izuku hoped, prayed, that his friend was safe. But for the first time, Izuku accepted that he couldn't control it. He couldn't fly there. He couldn't punch the problem away. All he could do was survive Aizawa, and tomorrow, he would survive a little bit better. Izuku fell asleep instantly, his dreams filled not with colorful smashes, but with gray cloth and silent footsteps in the dark. The night in Mizurufu was quiet, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in Izuku Midoriya's muscles. It was Wednesday night of the internship week. 3 days of remedial heroics under Shota Aizawa had stripped Izuku down to his rawest components. His knuckles were raw from grappling with the canvas binding cloth. His shins were bruised a mottled purple from Aizawa's unrelenting sweeps. His mind, usually a chaotic storm of analysis and anxiety, had been beaten into a state of singular, exhausted focus. He lay on his bed in the Heights Alliance dorms, staring at the ceiling. The room was dark. The clock on his bedside table read 8:30 p.m. He should be analyzing the day's training. He should be writing in his notebook about how Shinso's center of gravity shifted when he grew tired, or how Aizawa's blinking pattern changed before he activated erasure. But Izuku couldn't summon the energy to lift a pen. He felt heavy. Not the heaviness of burden, but the heaviness of lead. Aizawa had run them through a gauntlet of urban evasion that had lasted 6 hours without a break. If you can't run, you die, Aizawa had said, watching from a perch on a cement pillar like a gargoyle. If you can't hide, you die. If you can't think, you die. Izuku rolled over, wincing as his shoulder protested. He reached for his bedside table, his hand groping for his phone. He needed to check the news. He needed to see if Ida had replied. His fingers brushed empty wood. Right. Aizawa still had his phone. A tether to distraction. The teacher had called it. You get it back when you prove you can exist in the present moment. Izuku pulled his hand back, curling it into a fist against his chest. He felt a strange sense of phantom limb syndrome. For his entire life, he had been an observer. He watched hero fights online. He tracked incidents on forums. He texted his friends. Being cut off felt like being blindfolded. But, he had to admit, Aizawa was right. Without the phone, Izuku had slept better the last 2 nights. He hadn't spiraled into panic wondering why Uraraka posted a picture of a bruise, or why Kaken hadn't posted anything at all. He had just trained. And slept. Ida is fine, Izuku whispered to the empty room. It was a prayer, not a statement. He's with Manuel. Manuel is a pro. They're probably just doing patrols and filling out paperwork. He closed his eyes. The exhaustion overtook him like a rising tide. Within minutes, Izuku Midoriya was asleep, dreamless and deep, safe within the fortified walls of Ue High. He was safe. 300 kilometers away, the world was burning. Hosa's city was screaming. The sirens were the first thing Tenya Ida noticed. They weren't the rhythmic, orderly sirens of a traffic accident. They were the chaotic, overlapping wails of a city under siege. From the rooftop where he stood, Ida could see the smoke rising in 3 distinct columns. Explosions rocked the commercial district. There were reports of monsters, Nomu, rampaging through the streets. Ida-kun! Manuel shouted, his voice laced with panic. The normal hero was adjusting his helmet, looking torn between the chaos downtown and his charge. We need to evacuate the civilians near the station. Stay close to me. Do not engage the villains, Ida heard him. The words entered his ears, processed through the logical centers of his brain, and were promptly incinerated by the rage boiling in his gut. Villains. The Nomu were a distraction. He knew it. The League of Villains was messy, loud. But the man he was hunting, the man who had crippled Tensei, who had stolen the light from his brother's eyes, was not loud. He was a shadow. Ida-kun? Manuel turned, realizing the boy wasn't moving. I have to go, Ida said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Mechanical. Cold. Go? Go where? The evacuation is that way. I have a duty, Ida said. He didn't look at Manuel. He looked at the dark alleyways that crisscrossed the district like scars. I will catch up to you. Wait. Tenya! Ida activated his quirk. Recipro burst. With a roar of engines that drowned out Manuel's protest, Ida vanished. He was a blur of silver and blue, tearing across the rooftops. He wasn't running toward the fires. He was running toward the darkness. He had spent the last 2 days patrolling these streets, not looking for purse snatchers, but hunting for a specific aura. He had analyzed the hero killer's patterns. Stains struck in blind spots, in the quiet places where the light of society didn't reach. While the pros were distracted by the Nomu, Stain would be hunting. Ida skidded around a corner, his metal boots sparking against the concrete. His breath came in sharp, jagged gasps behind his helmet. Where are you? Come out. Come out and face justice. He didn't care about the hero laws. He didn't care about his internship. He saw Tensei in the hospital bed, tubes down his throat, weeping silently because he couldn't feel his legs. You took him from me, Ida thought, his vision blurring with tears of rage. You took the best of us. He turned into a narrow alleyway in the Ekizen district. It was silent here, the roar of the Nomu attack muffled by the high brick walls. Then he heard it. The sound of metal scraping on bone. Ida stopped. He peered into the gloom. At the end of the alley, a pro-hero lay slumped against a dumpster. It was Native. He was bleeding profusely from his shoulder, his eyes glazed and unfocused. Standing over him, illuminated by a flickering streetlight, was a man who looked like a nightmare stitched together. Red scarf. Bandages. Katana. The hero killer, Stain. Stain pulled his blade from Native's shoulder with a sickening wet sound. He flicked the blood onto the pavement. A false hero, Stain rasped. His voice was like grinding stones. Weak. You worry about your image, not your duty. You are a cancer. Stain raised the blade for the killing stroke. Stop! The shout ripped from Ida's throat. Stain paused. He didn't flinch. He slowly turned his head, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the armored figure at the alley entrance. A child? Stain muttered. He lowered the sword slightly. Go away. This doesn't concern you. The city is burning. Go save someone. Ida trembled. It wasn't fear. It was hatred. Pure, unadulterated hatred. You! Ida stepped forward, his engines revving low and menacing. You are the hero killer. Stain. I am the purge, Stain corrected. He turned his body fully toward Ida. And you have good eyes. You saw a wounded hero and came running. Good. Take him and go. I will spare you because you are young. Spare me? Ida laughed. It was a broken, jagged sound. He ripped his helmet off, letting it clatter to the filthy ground. He wanted this monster to see his face. You don't get to spare anyone. Do you remember the name Ingenium? Stain tilted his head. Ingenium. Ah. The one with the engines. Yes. He was disappointing. He survived? He can never work again. Ida screamed. Tears streamed down his face. He was a true hero. He was the best hero. And you crushed him. I am his brother. I am here to kill you. The atmosphere in the alley shifted instantly. The air grew cold. The killing intent radiating from Stain became a physical pressure, heavy and suffocating. Stain's expression changed from indifference to disgust. Kill me? Stain whispered. He pointed his blade at Ida. Save the man behind me first. He is bleeding out. He is helpless. Shut up. Ida roared. This is about you and me. No, Stain said. His eyes glowed red in the shadows. This is about you and your selfishness. You aren't a hero. You're just a child throwing a tantrum. You ignored a dying man to satisfy your own ego. Stain lowered his stance. You are a fake. And fakes must be culled. Ida didn't wait. Recipro burst. He launched himself forward, a silver bullet aimed at Stain's heart. He was fast. Faster than Tensei. Faster than sound. Die. Stain didn't move. Not until the last fraction of a second. As Ida's kick snapped out, Stain sidestepped. It was a minimal movement, efficient and terrifying. Slash. Ida felt a sting on his helmetless cheek. A small cut. Ida's momentum carried him past Stain. He skidded, turning around for a second pass. I'm not done. His body seized. Ida crashed to the ground. His legs, his arms, his neck, nothing moved. He lay face down on the wet asphalt, his eyes wide with confusion. What? What happened? My quirk, Stain said, walking over to him. He licked the blood off his blade. Ida's blood. Bloodkill. Once I ingest your blood, your body freezes. Stain stood over Ida. He looked down with supreme disappointment. You had speed, Stain noted. But you had no conviction. You telegraphed your hatred. A hero wields power for others. You wield it for yourself. Stain raised his sword. He positioned the tip directly over Ida's shoulder. Goodbye, false hero. Midoriya. Ida thought, panic finally piercing through the rage. Uraraka. Mom. Tensei. I'm sorry. In another timeline, a green flash would have appeared. A smash would have shattered the air. A friend would have arrived to save him from himself. But Izuka Midoriya was asleep in a dorm room 300 kilometers away. There was no smash. There was only the sound of steel piercing flesh. Ida screamed. Todoroki Shoto was running. He had been with his father, fighting the Noma near the station. It had been chaos. Endeavor was a whirlwind of fire, incinerating the monsters, shouting orders. But Shoto had felt a pull. A strange intuition. He had seen Manuel running frantically through the crowds, shouting Ida's name. Ida isn't here, Shoto had realized. Manuel lost him. Shoto knew about Ingenium. He knew Hoso was Stain's hunting ground. He put the pieces together instantly. He had tried to check his phone. Usually, in these situations, Midoriya would have sent something. A location. A warning. Midoriya was the nexus of the class, the one who connected the dots. But his phone was empty. No messages. Midoriya is at UA, Shoto reminded himself. He's not here. Nobody knows where Ida is. Shoto had made a choice. He broke away from Endeavor. Shoto. Where are you going? his father had bellowed, incinerating Anoma's head. "Ida is missing!" Shoto shouted back. "I'm checking the alleyways. Don't be a fool! Stay with the pros." Shoto ignored him. He ran toward the darker district, the Ekizan ward. It was a logical deduction. Stain preferred low-traffic areas with multiple escape routes. But logic took time. Searching took time. He froze the ground to slide faster, creating an ice path. But the maze of alleys was confusing. "Where are you?" Shoto thought, panic rising in his chest. "Damn it, Ida, don't be stupid." He turned a corner and saw a flash of metal. He heard a scream. A horrible, guttural scream of pain. "Ida!" Shoto shouted. He burst into the alley. The sight that greeted him stopped him cold for a heartbeat. Native was passed out against the wall. Ida was pinned to the ground. Stain's katana was driven through Ida's left shoulder, staking him to the asphalt. Another knife was buried deep in his right thigh. Stain was crouching over him, sawing at the armor on Ida's arm with a serrated dagger. "Found another one," Stain murmured, looking up. Shoto reacted on instinct. He stomped his right foot. A massive glacier of ice surged forward, filling the alley. Stain leaped backward, agile as a spider, dodging the ice by inches. He landed on a fire escape above, crouching on the metal railing. "Todoroki-kun!" Ida gasped. His voice was wet and weak. Blood was pooling beneath him, dark and glossy in the moonlight. "Don't talk," Shoto commanded. He kept his eyes on Stain, his left side igniting with flames. "I'm getting you out of here." "Careful," Ida choked out. "His quirk, if he licks your blood, you freeze." "Blood," Shoto thought. "Close range is a death sentence." "You have good reflexes," Stain called down. "And good fire. But your eyes, they are unfocused." "You are uncertain." Stain leaped. He didn't come down in a straight line. He bounced off the walls, a blur of motion. Shoto unleashed a wave of fire. Hell spider. The heat was intense, but Stain was faster. He ducked under the flames, slicing through the air. Shoto threw up an ice wall. Clang! Stain's sword shook the ice. He was close. Too close. Shoto backed up, trying to keep the distance. But he was fighting defensively. He couldn't unleash his full power because Ida and Native were in the blast zone. "I need backup," Shoto realized. "I can't beat him alone while protecting two hostages." "Midoriya," Shoto whispered. In the sports festival, Midoriya had broken through Shoto's walls. He had been the catalyst. Now, Shoto needed that reckless courage. But he was alone. Stain closed the gap. He threw a knife. It grazed Shoto's arm. A small cut. "Got you," Stain whispered. Stain lunged, his tongue extending. It was grotesquely long, aiming for the drop of blood on Shoto's sleeve. "No!" Shoto ignited his left side, creating a barrier of fire around himself. Stain recoiled from the heat. "I won't let you!" Shoto yelled. But Stain was already moving. He wasn't aiming for Shoto. He dived toward Ida. "If I can't purge the new arrival yet," Stain hissed, landing on the ice beside Ida's prone form, "I will finish my work." "Stop!" Shoto screamed. He launched a massive ice spike, but he was a fraction of a second too slow. Stain grabbed the handle of the katana already impaled in Ida's shoulder. He didn't pull it out. He twisted it. He twisted it violently, then stomped on the hilt. There was a sickening crunch. The sound of bone shattering. The sound of nerves being severed. Ida's scream was a sound that would haunt Shoto for the rest of his life. It was the sound of a dream dying. "That arm will never lift a shield again," Stain declared. He raised his boot to stomp on Ida's engine exhaust pipes on his legs. "And these legs will never run." Boom! The wall of the building next to them exploded. A blur of yellow and white smashed into the alleyway. Gran Torino. The old hero bounced off the walls like a pinball, slamming his foot into Stain's face before the villain could bring his boot down. Stain flew backward, crashing into the brick wall. "Sorry I'm late, kid," Gran Torino shouted, landing in front of Shoto. "Saw the fire. Heard the screaming." "Gran Torino!" Shoto gasped. "Stay back," the old man ordered. "He's fast." Then, the heat rose. The ice in the alley began to melt instantly. Endeavor descended from the sky, a comet of rage. He landed heavily, the asphalt cracking beneath his boots. His beard afire was roaring. "Stain!" Endeavor bellowed. Stain pulled himself out of the rubble. He was bleeding from his head. He looked at Gran Torino. He looked at Endeavor. Then he looked at the broken boy on the ground. Endeavor. Stain spat. The hatred in his voice was palpable. "The greatest fake of them all. You hurt my son's classmate," Endeavor said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have terrorized this city enough." Stain laughed. It was a manic, desperate sound. He gripped his sword. "Come then. Try and kill me. The only one allowed to kill me is All Might." Stain launched himself at Endeavor. It was suicide. Endeavor didn't hesitate. He didn't play games. He unleashed a concentrated beam of white-hot fire. Flash, fire, fist, jet, burn. The blast engulfed the alley. Shoto had to create an ice dome over Ida and Native just to stop them from being roasted alive. When the flames cleared, Stain was unconscious. His body was scorched, his weapon melted. He was slumped against the far wall, defeated. Silence fell over the alley. "Secure the villain," Endeavor barked into his comms. "We need medics immediately." Ekazan District. Multiple severe injuries. Shoto dissolved the ice dome. He dropped to his knees beside Ida. "Ida," Shoto whispered. Ida was conscious, but barely. His face was pale, drained of blood. His glasses were shattered. He looked at Shoto. His eyes were empty. Ida wheezed. "I couldn't." "Save your strength," Shoto said, pressing his hands against the wound in Ida's shoulder to staunch the bleeding. "The ambulance is coming." Ida tried to move his left arm. It just flopped, lifeless, held on by muscle and skin, the bone shattered. He tried to twitch his right leg. The engine pipe was bent, crushed by the initial impact. "I can't feel it," Ida whispered. A tear leaked from his eye, mixing with the blood and grime. "Todoroki. I can't feel my arm." Shoto didn't know what to say. He just held his friend's good hand and waited for the sirens. Thursday morning. 5 a.m. Izuku woke up before his alarm. His internal clock had adjusted to Aizawa's schedule. He sat up, stretching. His body was stiff, but the crushing exhaustion from the night before had faded into a dull ache. He felt clear. He got dressed in his gym uniform. He grabbed a protein bar and headed out. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. It looked like a beautiful day. He jogged to Gym Gamma. He was 2 minutes early. Shinso was already there, leaning against the wall, looking like a zombie. "Morning," Shinso grunted. "Morning," Izuku replied, bouncing on his toes. "Ready for day 4? "No," Shinso said. "But let's do it anyway." The door to the gym opened. Aizawa walked out. Izuku stopped bouncing. Aizawa looked terrible. Even by Aizawa standards. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin pale. He wasn't wearing his hero costume. He was wearing his formal teaching clothes, but his tie was undone. He held something in his hand. "Midoriya," Aizawa said. His voice lacked its usual bite. It was flat. "Tired." "Sensei?" Izuku took a step forward. Is something wrong?" Aizawa held out his hand. It was Izuku's phone. "Take it," Aizawa said. Izuku took the phone. A cold dread started to pool in his stomach. Did I pass the test? Can I have it back?" "The test is suspended," Aizawa said. "There was an incident in Hosu last night." Izuku froze. "Hosu?" "The League of Villains released 3 Nomu into the city center," Aizawa explained. "It was a coordinated attack. Extensive property damage. Casualties." Izuku's fingers fumbled with the phone, turning it on. The screen lit up. 57 missed calls. 102 unread messages. Most were from the class group chat. Some from his mom. "Ida," Izuku whispered. He looked up at Aizawa. "Is Ida okay?" Aizawa didn't answer immediately. He looked at the ground, then back at Izuku. "Tenya Ida engaged the hero killer, Stain in unauthorized combat," Aizawa said. Izuku's heart stopped. He fought Stain? "He found the hero killer attacking the pro-hero native," Aizawa continued. "He engaged him alone. He was overwhelmed." "Is he?" Izuku couldn't say the word. "He is alive," Aizawa said. Todoroki and Endeavor arrived on the scene and subdued the villain. Ida is in Hosu General Hospital. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He's alive. Oh, thank God. He's alive. Midoriya, Aizawa said sharply. Izuku looked up. Stain's quirk immobilizes his victims, Aizawa said. He tortures them. He judges them. Aizawa took a deep breath. Ida suffered multiple lacerations. A punctured lung. But the most severe damage was to his left shoulder and right leg. Aizawa pointed to his own shoulder. The brachial plexus nerves were severed. The humerus was shattered. And his engine radiator was crushed into the muscle tissue of his thigh. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Recovery girl is on her way to Hosu, Aizawa said quietly. But she has already reviewed the scans. She can heal the flesh. She can mend the bone. But she cannot regrow dead nerves. And she cannot fix complex mechanical mutations. Aizawa looked Izuku in the eye. Ida will live. But his left arm is permanently paralyzed. And his top speed, he may never be able to run at high velocity again without risking permanent engine failure. Izuku dropped the phone. It hit the concrete with a crack. No, Izuku whispered. That's not true. He's ingenium. He's going to be ingenium. He is lucky to be alive, Aizawa said. If Todoroki had arrived a minute later, we would be planning a funeral today. Izuku stared at his hands. Last night, while Ida was bleeding in an alley, while his arm was being destroyed, while his dream was being butchered, Izuku was sleeping. He was sleeping because he was tired from training. He was sleeping because he didn't have his phone. If I had my phone, the thought screamed in his mind. If I had checked on him. If I had known. It's my fault, Izuku whispered. No, Aizawa said firmly. It is Stain's fault. And it is Ida's fault for seeking revenge. You were here. You were following orders. I knew! Izuku screamed. The sound echoed through the gym. Shinso took a step back, eyes wide. I knew he was weird! Izuku yelled, tears exploding from his eyes. I knew he was going to Hosa for revenge. I texted him and he didn't reply. I should have told you. I should have told All Might. I should have gone there. And done what? Aizawa stepped forward, his voice rising. Died with him? I could have saved him. Izuku roared. Green lightning crackled around his body. One for all flared to life, uncontrolled, violent. The concrete beneath his feet cracked. I have this power. I have All Might's power. Why do I have it if I'm not there when my friends need me? Midoriya, calm down, Aizawa ordered, his eyes glowing red. He erased the quirk instantly. Izuku crumbled. The power vanished, leaving him with nothing but the grief. He fell to his knees, sobbing into the concrete. I was sleeping, he choked out. I was just sleeping. Aizawa stood over him. He didn't offer comfort. He didn't pat his back. This is the reality, Aizawa said. This is what happens when you fail. This is what happens when you aren't strong enough. You can't be everywhere. You can't save everyone. Aizawa looked at Shinso, who was pale and silent. Class is cancelled today, Aizawa said. Go pack a bag. We are going to Hosu. Izuku looked up, his face a mess of snot and tears. We?